It began with a meeting so private that even senior palace aides were reportedly kept outside the room. No agenda was published. No briefing followed. Yet within hours, whispers spread through royal corridors that King Charles had made a decision capable of reshaping the balance of power inside the monarchy. When Catherine emerged from that meeting, observers noticed a calm confidence that had been missing for months. What had the king entrusted to her, and why did it leave Camilla's family completely stunned? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The silence surrounding the gathering only fueled the speculation. According to palace whispers, the meeting brought together King Charles, Prince William, Princess Catherine, and a select group of senior royal advisors whose involvement immediately raised eyebrows among those familiar with royal affairs. What made the situation even more unusual was the extraordinary effort to keep details from reaching the wider palace staff. Officials who would normally receive briefings were reportedly told nothing. Schedules were altered, discussions were compartmentalized, and for a brief moment, one of the most watched families in the world seemed determined to keep a major development completely hidden from public view. But secrets inside royal circles rarely remain buried for long. As the hours passed, fragments of information began surfacing through trusted media contacts and palace insiders. The rumors all pointed toward the same astonishing possibility. King Charles was preparing to transfer a significant royal responsibility, one carrying enormous symbolic weight. At first, many dismissed the claims as exaggeration. After all, responsibilities tied to the monarchy's most treasured symbols are not casually reassigned. Yet the confidence with which the whispers spread suggested that something truly historic had taken place behind closed doors. The atmosphere inside royal circles reportedly shifted almost overnight, with conversations suddenly focused on Catherine and what role she might be preparing to assume. What made the story even more explosive was the unusual silence ordered throughout the palace. Sources suggested that staff members were instructed to avoid discussing the meeting entirely. Such measures only intensified curiosity. Why would a routine administrative discussion require this level of secrecy? Why would senior officials refuse to comment, even off the record? Questions multiplied with every passing hour, and the absence of answers only strengthened the growing belief that the monarchy was entering a new phase. Some insiders even described the mood as one of cautious anticipation, as though a decision years in the making had finally reached its decisive moment. Meanwhile, attention increasingly turned toward Catherine herself. For years, she had steadily taken on greater responsibilities, earning a reputation for discipline, patience, and unwavering dedication to duty. Yet even those who supported her rise seemed surprised by the scale of what was now being discussed. Reports suggested she had been entrusted with an unprecedented level of authority, a development that many viewed as a remarkable vote of confidence from the king. Within royal circles, such trust is not granted lightly. It is earned through years of service, discretion, and loyalty. If the reports were true, then Charles had done far more than assign a new responsibility. He had delivered a powerful statement about the future of the monarchy. The reaction among those closest to Queen Camilla was reportedly immediate. Individuals who believed they understood the internal balance of influence suddenly found themselves confronting a dramatically different reality. Expectations were overturned. Assumptions were challenged. Some insiders described genuine surprise, while others struggled to understand why such a significant move had been kept hidden until the last possible moment. The shock only deepened as more details emerged, leaving many to wonder whether this was merely a ceremonial adjustment or the beginning of something much larger. By the following day, royal commentators, media insiders, and palace observers were all asking the same question. If Catherine had truly been granted expanded authority, what exactly did that authority involve? The answer, according to growing speculation, centered on one of the most priceless and symbolic treasures in the entire institution. And once that possibility entered the conversation, the story transformed from a palace rumor into a royal earthquake whose consequences could reach far beyond anyone initially imagined. But the real shock wasn't the meeting itself, it was the priceless royal legacy at the center of the king's extraordinary decision. For centuries, the crown jewels have represented far more than glittering gems and gold. They are symbols of continuity, authority, and national identity. Whoever oversees their ceremonial use occupies a position of enormous trust. So when reports emerged that King Charles was preparing to grant Catherine expanded authority over these treasured symbols, palace insiders immediately understood the significance. This wasn't simply about jewels, it was about influence, legacy, and the future face of the monarchy. The whispers that began after the secret palace meeting quickly evolved into something much larger. As royal commentators searched for answers, attention shifted toward the extraordinary collection of treasures that have stood at the heart of the monarchy for generations. The crown jewels are not merely ceremonial objects brought out for grand occasions. They represent the story of the crown itself, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition, sacrifice, triumph, and survival. Through wars, abdications, scandals, and changing eras, these symbols endured. They became physical reminders that while individuals may come and go, the institution remains. That is why responsibility connected to them has always been treated with exceptional care. Within royal circles, trust is often measured not by words but by responsibility. Those entrusted with safeguarding important traditions are seen as guardians of something greater than themselves. For decades, oversight surrounding royal treasures followed carefully established structures, designed to preserve both security and symbolism. Every decision carried significance. Every ceremonial appearance sent a message. Every assignment reflected confidence from the highest levels of the monarchy. This is precisely why reports surrounding Catherine's growing role generated such intense interest. If the Princess of Wales was indeed receiving expanded authority, then the decision represented much more than administrative change. It suggested a deliberate effort to shape the future. The timing made the development even more intriguing. Since becoming Princess of Wales, Catherine has steadily expanded her influence through patience rather than ambition. While others often found themselves surrounded by controversy, she built a reputation for consistency, discipline, and commitment to duty. Year after year, she embraced increasingly visible responsibilities, earning respect not only from royal supporters, but also from many who viewed the monarchy with skepticism. Her approach created something incredibly valuable within the institution: trust. And trust, more than titles or status, is the currency that determines who is ultimately given the greatest responsibilities. Many insiders began to wonder whether King Charles had been preparing for this moment for far longer than anyone realized. The king understood better than most that the monarchy's future depends on public confidence. Every decision is weighed not only for its immediate consequences, but also for what it signals about the years ahead. As challenges mounted, and the institution faced growing scrutiny, strengthening the image of the next generation became increasingly important. Catherine's popularity, composure, and dedication positioned her as a powerful symbol of stability. By reportedly granting her greater authority, Charles appeared to be reinforcing a message that the monarchy's future was already taking shape. Yet what truly elevated the importance of this responsibility was the immense symbolic power attached to it. The crown jewels represent legitimacy itself. They are connected to coronations, state ceremonies, and some of the most significant moments in royal history. Being placed closer to that legacy means being placed closer to the very heart of the institution. It signals confidence, it signals trust. Most importantly, it signals belief in someone's ability to protect what previous generations worked tirelessly to preserve. As these implications became clearer, palace observers realized they were witnessing something far more consequential than a routine adjustment of duties. What began as whispers behind closed doors was rapidly transforming into a story about succession, influence, and the future direction of the monarchy itself. The questions were no longer limited to what Catherine had received. Instead, Attention was beginning to shift toward those who believed they would remain closest to these symbols of royal power and whether they were prepared for the changes now unfolding around them. And as the importance of the jewels became clearer, attention quickly turned to the people who expected to remain closest to them. Long before the king's decision became public, insiders were already describing growing tensions behind the scenes. Different royal households reportedly held competing visions for the future of the institution. As Charles focused on stability during a challenging period, questions about influence, access, and authority quietly intensified. Few expected those tensions to center on the crown jewels, but that is precisely where the battle would emerge. As speculation surrounding Catherine's growing responsibilities continued to spread, many palace observers began looking back at the months leading up to the announcement. What they found was a pattern of subtle developments that, at the time, seemed disconnected. Viewed together, however, they painted a very different picture. Beneath the carefully maintained image of unity, competing priorities were reportedly taking shape behind closed doors. Different groups within the royal household appeared to hold different ideas about how the monarchy should evolve. Some favored continuity above all else. Others believed the institution needed to adapt more aggressively to changing public expectations. While those disagreements rarely surfaced publicly, insiders increasingly suggested that private discussions had become far more significant than many realized. At the center of those conversations stood Catherine. Her rise had been gradual, but it had also been remarkably steady. Every year seemed to bring additional responsibilities, greater visibility, and stronger public support. Unlike sudden promotions or dramatic changes, her growing influence unfolded quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Yet by the time many recognized what was happening, her position within the monarchy had become stronger than ever. Public confidence in her continued to grow, and with that confidence came growing expectations. More people began viewing Catherine not simply as the Princess of Wales, but as a key figure in shaping the monarchy's future. That growing prominence reportedly sparked intense discussion within palace circles. Some believed her increasing responsibilities reflected careful preparation for the future reign of William. Others viewed the changes as part of a broader effort to modernize how the monarchy presented itself to the public. The institution had spent years navigating controversies, challenges, and shifting public attitudes. In that environment, figures capable of projecting stability became increasingly valuable. Catherine appeared to embody precisely those qualities. As a result, her influence expanded not through confrontation but through trust, consistency, and patience. Yet every rise creates new tensions, especially within an institution where symbolism often carries as much weight as authority itself. Meanwhile, conversations about future leadership reportedly became more frequent. While King Charles remained firmly on the throne, attention naturally drifted toward the next generation. Advisors, commentators, and insiders increasingly focused on what the monarchy would look like in the years ahead. William and Catherine were often placed at the center of those discussions, not because change was imminent, but because preparation never truly stops within royal life. Every responsibility assigned today can shape perceptions tomorrow. Every decision carries implications that stretch far beyond the present moment. As these conversations intensified, concerns reportedly emerged among different palace factions. Some worried that long-standing arrangements could eventually be reconsidered. Others questioned how influence would be distributed as the next generation assumed larger roles. Though much of the debate remained hidden from public view, small signs of resistance allegedly began surfacing. Whispers of disagreement circulated through royal circles. Questions were quietly raised. Assumptions were challenged. What had once seemed settled no longer appeared entirely certain. The atmosphere became increasingly charged with anticipation, even if few could identify the precise issue driving the tension. What made the situation especially fascinating was that most observers initially focused on titles, duties, and public appearances. Very few suspected that one of the monarchy's most treasured symbols would eventually become the focal point of these competing visions. Yet behind the scenes, the significance of that possibility was growing. The closer Catherine moved toward the heart of the institution, the more important every decision surrounding her became. And with each passing week, the sense that something major was approaching became harder to ignore. Those early disagreements, whispers, and rival expectations created an undercurrent that would soon erupt into one of the most talked-about developments in royal circles. The tension had been building for months. The questions had been accumulating for even longer. But despite all the speculation, all the private discussions, and all the competing ambitions, no one truly knew how the story would end. Yet none of those disagreements prepared anyone for the moment Charles finally made his choice. The announcement reportedly landed like a thunderclap. According to palace whispers, King Charles formally approved a major expansion of Catherine's authority concerning royal ceremonial treasures and responsibilities. It was a move many believed would happen eventually, but few imagined it would happen so soon. The implications were immediate, and the reaction was impossible to ignore. For weeks, speculation had been building behind palace walls. Rumors circulated through royal circles, advisors exchanged careful observations, and commentators searched for clues that might explain the growing tension surrounding Catherine's role. Yet even those who sensed change was coming were unprepared for the scale of the king's decision. When reports finally emerged that Charles had approved a significant expansion of Catherine's authority, the atmosphere shifted almost instantly. What had previously been whispered as a possibility suddenly became the defining conversation throughout the monarchy. The long period of uncertainty had ended. A new chapter had begun. According to those familiar with palace operations, senior officials moved quickly once the decision was made. Conversations that had reportedly remained confidential for months were transformed into practical action. Internal arrangements were adjusted. Responsibilities were clarified. Long-established routines began adapting to reflect the new reality. The speed of those changes suggested something important. This was not a temporary measure designed to address a short-term issue. It carried the appearance of a carefully planned transition that had been considered long before it became public knowledge. The more people learned, the clearer it became that this decision represented a deliberate statement about trust and the future direction of the institution. At the center of it all stood Catherine. For years, she had built her reputation through patience, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to duty. Unlike many figures who attracted attention through controversy or ambition, her influence grew steadily through consistency. That distinction mattered. Within royal life, trust is often earned through reliability rather than visibility. By reportedly granting her greater authority over ceremonial treasures and responsibilities, Charles appeared to be acknowledging years of dedication. The decision positioned Catherine not simply as a respected member of the family, but as a trusted guardian of traditions that stretch back through generations. The king's choice also carried another powerful message. It reflected confidence in the future. Observers quickly noted that William's support appeared unwavering throughout the process. Together, William and Catherine increasingly represented the monarchy's next era, and many insiders viewed the decision as recognition of that reality. Rather than focusing solely on the present, Charles seemed to be looking years ahead. Every institution must eventually prepare for transition, and within the monarchy, preparation often happens quietly, long before it becomes visible to the public. This move suggested that preparations were accelerating. As news continued to spread, palace staff reportedly began adjusting to the new arrangement. For some, the changes were expected. For others, they represented a remarkable shift in responsibility. Conversations turned toward what Catherine's expanded authority might mean in practical terms, and how her growing influence would shape future ceremonial traditions. The adjustment process itself became part of the story, reinforcing the perception that the monarchy was entering a significant period of transformation. Perhaps most fascinating were the historic comparisons that immediately emerged across royal circles. Commentators, former aides, and royal observers reportedly began drawing parallels to previous moments when authority was gradually entrusted to figures destined for larger roles. Those comparisons elevated the significance of Charles's decision even further. What initially appeared to be a simple reassignment of responsibilities increasingly looked like a milestone within a much larger royal narrative. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Every discussion seemed to return to the same conclusion. Trust had been placed where the future was expected to lead. Yet while supporters viewed the announcement as a powerful endorsement of Catherine's leadership, others saw it very differently. Beneath the public discussion, quieter reactions were unfolding. Expectations were being challenged. Assumptions were being overturned. And among those who believed influence would remain exactly where it had always been, the shock was only beginning to settle in. But while supporters celebrated the decision, others reportedly struggled to hide their disbelief. Reports suggest that the news sent shockwaves through circles closely associated with Queen Camilla. Expectations, assumptions, and long-held beliefs about influence inside the royal household suddenly appeared uncertain. Those who thought existing dynamics would continue unchanged found themselves confronting a dramatically different reality. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone could see it. The reaction was not immediate, because many simply refused to believe the reports at first. For months, royal watchers had speculated about Catherine's growing importance within the institution, but few anticipated a development of this magnitude. The announcement seemed to arrive with a force that disrupted carefully held expectations. Within palace circles, conversations reportedly changed almost overnight. What had once been treated as a distant possibility was now an undeniable reality. The king's decision had transformed Catherine's position, and in doing so, it had altered the assumptions that many people had quietly relied upon for years. Those closest to Queen Camilla were said to be particularly surprised. According to palace whispers, there had long been a belief that existing arrangements would continue largely unchanged. Stability often creates confidence, and confidence can sometimes evolve into certainty. Yet certainty has a way of collapsing when confronted by unexpected change. Suddenly, discussions were no longer centered on preserving familiar structures. Instead, attention shifted toward understanding a new landscape that seemed to be emerging in real time. Individuals who believed they understood how influence operated inside the monarchy now faced difficult questions about what came next. At the heart of those questions, that Charles's decision carried implications extending far beyond ceremonial responsibilities. The move appeared symbolic, but symbolism has always held extraordinary power within royal life. Every gesture, every assignment, and every public sign of trust sends a message. In this case, many observers interpreted the king's choice as a declaration of confidence in Catherine's future role. That interpretation only intensified debate. Some viewed the development as a natural progression based on years of service and dedication. Others reportedly struggled to reconcile it with expectations they had held for a very long time. Meanwhile, public interest surged. What began as palace speculation quickly became one of the most discussed royal stories in recent memory. Commentators examined every detail. Supporters praised the decision as evidence of careful planning for the future. Critics questioned what it might mean for existing relationships and established dynamics. Across newspapers, television programs, and online discussions, one theme remained constant. People sensed they were witnessing a significant turning point. The story was no longer just about responsibility. It was about succession, trust, and the future direction of the monarchy itself. As attention intensified, Catherine's role continued expanding in the public imagination. The Princess of Wales was increasingly viewed as a central figure in shaping the institution's next chapter. Her reputation for composure, consistency, and commitment to duty only strengthened that perception. Each new discussion seemed to reinforce the idea that she was becoming more deeply connected to the monarchy's most important traditions and responsibilities. What had once been gradual now felt undeniable. Her rise was no longer measured in small steps but in major milestones. Palace observers began describing the moment as a defining crossroads, not because one decision alone could transform centuries of history, but because certain decisions reveal where that history may be heading. The announcement appeared to do exactly that. It forced people to reconsider assumptions about influence, leadership, and the future balance within the royal household. The conversations grew louder, the speculation became more intense, and with every passing day, recognition spread that a new royal era might already be taking shape. Yet beneath the reactions, debates, and growing fascination, an even larger question remained unanswered. If this decision truly signaled the beginning of a new chapter, what would that chapter ultimately mean for the monarchy itself? The answer would soon become the focus of every conversation taking place behind palace walls. As reactions spread through royal circles, attention turned toward what this meant for the monarchy's future. For years, Catherine carefully built a reputation based on patience, discipline, and duty. She rarely sought the spotlight, yet responsibility seemed to find her at every stage of her royal journey. Now, with expanded authority reportedly entrusted to her, many observers believe she has crossed an important threshold, one that places her closer than ever to the heart of the institution. What makes this moment so remarkable is not how suddenly it appeared, but how long it may have been in the making. Long before discussions about ceremonial treasures and royal authority captured public attention, Catherine was quietly building the foundation that would eventually support responsibilities of this magnitude. Her journey was never defined by dramatic declarations or aggressive ambition. Instead, it unfolded through years of careful preparation, measured decisions, and a consistent commitment to the role she had accepted. While others often found themselves caught in cycles of controversy and distraction, Catherine steadily focused on duty, creating a reputation that many believed would eventually lead to greater trust from the institution she served. That trust was not built overnight. It developed through countless engagements, charitable initiatives, and responsibilities that gradually expanded as confidence in her leadership grew. Each new role seemed to prepare her for the next. Each challenge tested her ability to balance tradition with the demands of a changing world. The monarchy has always relied on individuals capable of carrying immense symbolic weight, and over time, many observers began to see Catherine emerging as one of those figures. Her approach remained consistent even as expectations increased. She rarely appeared eager for greater authority, which paradoxically made her seem even more qualified to receive it. Her dedication to royal tradition became another defining characteristic of her rise. Throughout years of public service, Catherine developed a reputation for respecting the institution's history, while also understanding the importance of remaining connected to modern audiences. This balance proved increasingly valuable as the monarchy navigated a period of transition and uncertainty. Some royal figures attempted to command attention. Catherine appeared content earning trust. That difference became one of her greatest strengths. It allowed her influence to grow naturally rather than forcefully, creating a sense of credibility that resonated both inside palace walls and among the public. Public admiration played a significant role as well. Polls, commentators, and royal observers frequently pointed to the confidence many people placed in Catherine's ability to represent the future of the monarchy. Her popularity was not rooted solely in public appearances, but in the perception that she approached her responsibilities with sincerity and discipline. As that trust deepened, so did expectations. Increasingly, conversations about the future of the institution included her name at the center. The more people imagined the monarchy's next chapter, the more difficult it became to separate that vision from Catherine herself. Equally important was the support she reportedly received from Prince William and other senior figures within royal circles. Stability often depends on unity, and many observers noted that Catherine's expanding role appeared closely connected to broader efforts aimed at strengthening the monarchy's future leadership. The king's decision, therefore, seemed to represent more than personal confidence. It reflected institutional confidence. It suggested that the qualities Catherine had demonstrated over many years were now being formally recognized through expanded authority and greater responsibility. The symbolism attached to that authority only amplified its importance. Being entrusted with responsibilities connected to some of the monarchy's most treasured traditions places an individual near the very center of the institution's identity. Such trust carries enormous meaning. It signals reliability, continuity, and belief in someone's ability to protect a legacy that extends far beyond any single generation. For many observers, that symbolism spoke louder than any official statement ever could. Yet, perhaps the most significant aspect of this moment lies in what it suggests about the years ahead. As Catherine's responsibilities continue to expand, expectations surrounding her future role inevitably grow alongside them. The story is no longer simply about what she has achieved. It is increasingly about what she may be preparing to become. And that realization transforms this development from a royal headline into something far more consequential for the future of the monarchy. But the significance of this moment extends far beyond one princess and one collection of jewels. Every royal decision carries a message. Some are subtle. Others reshape perceptions overnight. Many insiders believe this decision belongs firmly in the second category. By placing greater trust in Catherine, King Charles may have sent a signal about the future direction of the monarchy and about who he believes is best equipped to protect its most cherished traditions. As the immediate reactions began to settle, a deeper interpretation of the king's decision started taking shape. What initially appeared to be a significant transfer of responsibility increasingly looked like something far more strategic. Royal institutions rarely operate through coincidence. Every appointment, every endorsement, and every public display of confidence carries meaning. That is why so many palace observers focused not only on what Catherine had been entrusted with, but on what the decision itself seemed to communicate. Beneath the headlines and speculation, many believed Charles was delivering a carefully crafted message about stability, continuity, and the future of the crown. Trust has always been one of the monarchy's most powerful forms of currency. Titles can be granted, positions can change, public popularity can rise and fall, but trust, especially trust demonstrated through responsibility, carries a different weight altogether. By reportedly expanding Catherine's authority, Charles appeared to be identifying someone he believed could safeguard traditions that have survived for generations. For supporters of the monarchy, that symbolism was impossible to ignore. The decision suggested confidence not merely in Catherine's abilities today, but in her importance to the institution's long-term future. Many commentators quickly connected the move to the growing role of William and Catherine as the monarchy's future leadership team. For years, they have increasingly been viewed as the faces of the next chapter. Their public image, their responsibilities, and their relationship with the institution have all contributed to that perception. This latest development only strengthened those views. If previous years were about preparation, some observers argued that this moment represented progression. The future was no longer being discussed as a distant concept. It was gradually becoming visible through the responsibilities being assigned in the present. The public response reflected that interpretation. Across royal circles, conversations repeatedly returned to themes of stability and continuity. In uncertain times, people often look for reassurance that important institutions remain secure. Many saw Charles's decision as exactly that kind of reassurance. Rather than creating uncertainty, the move appeared to reinforce confidence. It suggested that careful planning was underway and that the monarchy's leadership transition, whenever it eventually arrives, would be built upon trusted foundations rather than sudden change. That perception carried enormous significance for an institution whose strength often depends on public confidence. Equally important was the message regarding tradition itself. The crown has survived because each generation accepts the responsibility of preserving what it inherited while preparing it for those who come next. By connecting Catherine more closely to some of the monarchy's most symbolic responsibilities, Charles appeared to be reinforcing that principle. The decision suggested that tradition was not being abandoned or weakened. Instead, it was being actively protected through deliberate preparation. In that sense, the announcement became about much more than ceremonial authority. It became a statement about stewardship. Royal commentators were quick to recognize the broader implications. Some described the move as one of the clearest indicators yet of how Charles views the future structure of the monarchy. Others interpreted it as a carefully timed endorsement of Catherine's growing role. Regardless of perspective, few dismissed its significance. The conversation extended far beyond palace walls because the decision touched upon questions that have fascinated royal observers for years. Who will shape the institution's future? How will responsibilities evolve? Which figures will carry the greatest influence moving forward? Suddenly, those questions seemed a little less uncertain. The implications for future responsibilities also became increasingly difficult to overlook. Expanded authority often leads to expanded expectations. As Catherine's role grows, so too does public interest in what comes next. Every development now appears connected to a larger narrative about succession, leadership, and continuity. The king's decision may have answered some questions, but it also created new ones. And in many ways, those unanswered questions are precisely why the story continues to capture so much attention. And that larger message may explain why this decision continues to dominate palace conversations. In the end, the story is not merely about jewels, authority, or palace politics. It is about trust. At a moment when the monarchy faces uncertainty and transition, King Charles reportedly chose Catherine to safeguard one of its most treasured symbols. Whether viewed as a practical decision or a historic statement, the message appears unmistakable. A new guardian has stepped forward, and the future of the crown may never look quite the same again. After weeks of speculation, whispered conversations, and intense debate throughout royal circles, the story ultimately arrives at a remarkably simple question. Who does the king trust to help carry the monarchy forward? According to the reports that ignited this extraordinary discussion, Charles answered that question not with a speech or public declaration, but through responsibility. In royal life, responsibility often speaks louder than words. It reveals confidence. It signals intention. Most importantly, it identifies the individuals believed capable of protecting an institution that has endured through triumph, crisis, and transformation. That is why so many observers view this moment as far more significant than a routine adjustment of duties. They see it as a defining statement about the future. At the center of that future stands Catherine. Her rise within the monarchy has been gradual, measured, and built upon years of dedication. She did not arrive at this position through sudden promotion or dramatic circumstance. Instead, she earned increasing trust step by step, responsibility by responsibility. Each challenge strengthened her reputation. Each new role expanded her experience. Over time, she evolved from a respected member of the royal family into one of its most important figures. Now, many believe this latest development confirms what had been quietly unfolding for years. Catherine is no longer simply participating in the monarchy's future. She is becoming one of its defining architects. The symbolism surrounding the crown jewels only deepens that perception. Throughout the story, the jewels have represented much more than ceremonial treasures. They embody continuity, legitimacy, and the enduring nature of the institution itself. Being entrusted with responsibilities connected to such powerful symbols sends a message that cannot easily be ignored. It suggests confidence not only in a person's character, but also in their ability to preserve traditions that stretch across generations. In this sense, the jewels become more than objects. They become a reflection of trust itself, linking the past, present, and future through a single decision. For King Charles, the move also appears to reinforce confidence in the next generation of leadership. Every monarch understands that the strength of the institution depends on preparation. Stability is not created at the moment of transition. It is built years beforehand through careful planning, thoughtful decisions, and strategic trust. Many observers believe this decision reflects precisely that philosophy. By empowering Catherine, Charles may be demonstrating his belief that the monarchy's future rests in capable hands. It is a message designed not only for palace insiders, but for the wider public as well. That public remains deeply fascinated by the implications. Interest in the story has endured because people recognize that it touches on something larger than palace intrigue. It raises questions about succession, leadership, and continuity. It encourages reflection on how institutions survive change while preserving their identity. For some, the development represents reassurance. For others, it signals the beginning of a new era. Either way, it continues to inspire discussion because it speaks directly to the future of one of the world's most recognizable royal institutions. Perhaps that is why this moment feels so consequential. The balance of influence appears to have shifted. Expectations have evolved. Familiar assumptions have been challenged. Yet through all the speculation, one theme remains constant. The monarchy continues to place extraordinary value on duty, service, and responsibility. Those principles have guided generations before, and many believe they will guide generations yet to come. As the story reaches its conclusion, the larger picture becomes clearer. The decision is not simply about Catherine. It is not simply about Charles. And it is certainly not just about jewels. It is about legacy. It is about preserving an institution through careful stewardship and trusted leadership. In a period defined by change, the monarchy appears to be preparing for its future while honoring its past. Whether history ultimately views this moment as symbolic or transformational, its significance is already impossible to dismiss. Because in the House of Windsor, authority is never just given, it is earned, protected, and ultimately remembered as part of a royal legacy. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.